Hey everyone, I'd like to invite you into the live Q&A we did with Dr. Gil Hedley. We took a deep dive into what it takes to ride the waves of those 40 trillion magical cells constantly performing in our bodies at all times. We looked at the role of conviction and how that can be life-changing in an instant, and the role of direction, definition, and purpose. This is an interview you don't want to miss. How's everybody doing this morning? If you want to type in the chat box where you're coming in from, we'd love to know. We have the fabulous Dr. Gil Hedley with us here today. You guys may know him. He was a PhD in theological ethics at the University of Chicago's Divinity School. He was a certified Rolfer. He spent 5 years studying psychodynamics of energy healing in New York City. For over the past 27 years, actually 30, I think it is now, Gil, he's led hundreds of hours of hands-on human dissection workshops. So a lot of us have seen his incredible footage at the Joe Dispenza conferences where he shows us what the pineal gland looks like. He has outrageously fabulous videos on the vagus nerve, and I've had friends that have gone to his nerve tour. I'm really kicking myself for not having gone myself because they describe how life-changing it is. Once you realize that we're all a walking miracle, it's really hard to look at your life in a different perspective. And one of the other amazing things that happened when I was through with the 5 hours of his online course, I walked outside and I looked up at the trees that didn't have any leaves on them, and I went, oh my God, that's a complete reflection of what's going on in our nervous system and in our brains. So it's like there's this amazing, wonderful, invisible force going on that becomes visible in our bodies. And Gil, why don't you just take it away and share with us what some of the goodies are that people have come away with, what they've learned from you. Share.
Good. What have people learned from me? Lord only knows. I'm pretty excited though to see Lolly's Nerve Tour t-shirt there. She's a fashion maven wearing that beautiful tree. And I do love to talk about the nerve tree with its uncountable branches moving through our body. And in your beautiful flyer, you said you mentioned 40 trillion cells, and I love to think about that because every cell in our body has many operations going on, like at the cellular level, right? Ribosomes, mitochondria, proteins being produced and sorted and moved from here to there and joining with one another just inside of those cells, not to mention everything that happens between them. So if you multiply those operations, say 100 a second by 40 trillion, you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of trillions of successful operations that are happening in every moment of your life to sustain you in this form. And at the moment of your death, the majority of things are actually going right. You're quitting the form because the job is done, right? And so you have so much going on that's going right in your life. And we get stuck at a traffic light, our knuckles turn white, we start cursing at the people around us and the Lord in heaven itself, while one thing is frustrating us. And I'm just offering these statements as a perspective anchor, right? That any moment when your life sucks or seems to be sucking for whatever reason, right? Your lips are dry because you're in the mountains. You have a headache because you drank too much. Whatever. At that very moment when you're focusing on that irritation, there are literally hundreds of trillions of things going right in your life. And it's just an opportunity to remind ourselves that we can be thankful even in the midst of suffering, actually, because it's always a combo deal. If you wait, I like to say, if you wait for the pain to be gone to feel your pleasure, you'll die before you do. We're in form in this life on this hard, dense planet. And, things are going to be going wrong all the time. But the great, grand, spectacular, loving majority of what's going on for you is an amazing miracle. So just starting there, okay? Because it's not a bad place to start. Now, also on that flyer, we talk about amplifying your brain, hearing your heart. And here's the thing.
Hey guys, studies are showing that 68% of people that watch podcasts regularly don't click the subscribe button. Do me a huge favor. If you like this content, click subscribe so other people know where to go for the cool stuff. Thank you.
We are hardwired, literally hardwired. We've got like stringing nerve ropes that I can show you that literally go from your heart to your brain. The fibers are actually communicating in both directions, but the great majority of them are delivering information from your heart to your brain. Your heart feelings, that sensitivity that lives within all of us, your gut feelings, that deep responsiveness to the environment from our internal feelings are not some airy fairy new age girly notion that's tossed out there for us to dismiss in our objective scientific mechanistic culture. No, this stuff, this information highway is crowded with information for your brain. And we live in a culture that teaches us to ignore it as if it's some sort of, fantasy or extra stuff or doesn't real, it's not the real thing, right? I'm just telling you from an anatomical perspective, it's the real thing. Yeah. It's the more real thing. And the heart center, I call it the heart center because the heart reaches to every tendril of it, reaches to every cell of your body. So you are heart shaped, and the human heart isn't some amputee living inside your chest. It's a branching fractal form that reaches to the most peripheral places and then brings back information from those peripheral places. So it's the primary oscillator of your body, your heart. Its electromagnetic effluence is 5,000 times stronger than your brain. Now, we identify in our culture with our thoughts and the screaming mimi BS produced inside of our head all day long. But the design of our physical body, demonstrably, electromagnetically, communication-wise, is that we're a heart-centered creature. And if we take in that piece of information, we can contextualize the scrambled eggs in our head that are shouting this and that all day long and pushing us this way and that and full of anxiety and fear and worry. If we just permit ourselves to acknowledge the power of the heart to direct the symphony of the body, to direct the symphony of our lives, then we can shift that dominance that we experience in our culture of our brains, of our thoughts, and all of its honestly random steerings, right? Like, go this way, go that way. Should I do this? Should I do that? I really feel like I should do this, but then you start thinking, and then you negate the information pathway that's built into you. So that's number 2. Give your heart a chance to speak, because it is the born main oscillator of your entire system. And when you give your heart reign over your body, you are healthier. You live a life in a different kind of coherence than the brain could ever produce.
So let's say somebody's in a moment of stress. How do they more clearly listen to their heart?
The easiest way is to connect to your body in that moment of anxiety. So you're anxious, right? And the thing that's always happening in your body is your breath, right? And if you literally do this extremely simple thing, you're anxious and you go, you've inhaled Now you got to get it out. So blow it over your lips. Literally just blow it over your lips so that you have the sensation at your lips come into your mind, right? It's just the most nearest access to sensation is the air going out when you're anxious. You have an asthma attack, you can do this. You blow the air over your lips and notice you can feel your lips, right? There's your it's a tool. It's a tool to bring you back into your body and out of your thoughts, because it's the thoughts that produce the anxieties, right? And immediately when you return to your body, then you're returning to that place which your heart is directing. So it's an instant drop in, right? And it takes no seconds. We're talking a part of a second to begin reclaiming yourself from an anxious moment. If you take it further than that, you want to take step 2.
Yes, please.
Is to feel the air on the inhale. Now you got your exhale going over your lips. Now feel the inhale. And where's it going? It's going into your chest, right? If you notice it's going into your chest, now you're where your heart is located, right? You're already giving yourself back to your heart when you're paying attention to your breath in that way. It's so close. It's not far away. It doesn't take us long to reclaim ourselves. We think it'll say, oh my God, I was upset and now I'm going to be upset all day long. It doesn't take all day long to restore yourself. It can take seconds. Look at a cat. You know, you like step on the cat's tail. It's like, it runs around. It jumps off the curtains. It lands in the kitchen sink. It knocks the pots over. And then it's like, oh, no, it's cool. And just goes back to the couch.
Why is it that humans get stuck in our primitive fight or flight stress response and stay there where animals don't?
Not all humans do it, just neurotic ones. We're neurotic. That's the problem. And I spent 3 months in Haiti when I was about 20. It was my first experience of a non-neurotic culture. I was from northern New Jersey, the most neurotic place on earth. And by neurosis, I mean the propensity to contain one's emotions and prevent them from moving through your body. Ex movio, emotion is from the Latin ex movio, the moving out from. So we have sensation, and those sensations are born to move out from us. And as they move through our tissues, our musculoskeletal system, we gesticulate, we feel burning and prickly sensations and identify it as anger. We feel slumpy, and we call as grief or sorrow. Or we have all these outward expressions, right? But our cultural container for them is so tight that there's no, that we hold on to them. So someone, whatever, burns your eggs and you're pissed all day, right? In Haiti, they burn your eggs and you're like, what the fuck happened to my eggs? What did you do to my eggs? They're ruined. Try again. Yeah, and it's over. It's not. It moved through. I watched it over and over again. The cook is getting pestered by the kid, and she screams at the kid, and then she's literally holding her belly laughing, because the truth is life is pretty funny, and the joke isn't far from the anger in a culture that's not neurotic, that allows the emotions to pass through us. Now, you get pissed in the library in our culture, you're not going to say anything about it. You're going to put it in a box, or someone does something to you and you stew on it. Here we stew on stuff. If we stewed a little less and communicated a little more and expose our internal life, if we were a little more transparent with ourselves, and took the risk of being honest with one another about how we feel a little more often. I'm not saying to trash everybody. Our emotions are moving through us, but that doesn't mean they're a reality. Yeah. You can always say, well, it's my emotion. It's my truth. It's like, well, your truth could be very misdirected. Your emotional experience is based on very much on your thought process, right? Not so much on some immutable reality about the structure of the relationship, and you should be mad and they should apologize to you. That's all just garbage.
In Chinese medicine, the most popular diagnosis or common diagnosis in our neurotic culture is liver qi stagnation, and that's that energy trying to push, trying to express, and the liver loves to express. And when you stuff it down, when you know get bound up, things don't flow well. All those beautiful rivers of energy that you're
It's
Yep.
true. Mark is I see Mark.
Yeah. Let's take a question from Mark. Mark's one of your biggest fans, and he's out there wanting to be heard too. Mark,
Well, I hear you,
express your energy.
Yeah. Express your excitement.
I'm so grateful to be here. And see you again, Gil. So you just made a really interesting point, and then you've made it more interesting by continuing to say what you just said. But when you talked about how to regulate anxiety by taking that breath inward, so inward, right? So the breath takes us inward to connect to the heart, right? And let go of those emotions or feelings that aren't serving us. But my question is, on the flip side, to get out of our body, i.e., say holotropic breathing or something of that nature, what's happening that allows us to experience that in an outward sort of way as opposed to the inward way? Is that a clear question, I guess?
I'm not sure. I don't know about holotropic breathing. Is that the one where you go?
Yeah. So you talked about breathing to calm the nervous system, right?
Yeah.
But on the flip side, when we're breathing to excite it, so to say, and go out of our body, I'm just kind of curious, like what the connection is to what you're talking about.
Is that variable a tool? I mean, we're going to breathe whether we like it or not, right? In other words, if we try and like when you're a little kid camping and you're all in the tent and your cousin's like holds his breath until he passes out. Did anyone ever have a family like that? I did. And so we can use our breath in myriad ways. In the same way we can relax our muscular body or excite it. We can relax our sexual body or excite it. And so breath is a very variable tool when used intentionally. Right. If it's just happening, we're just being breathed by the universe. We don't even ask for it. Right. It's an experience rather than something we choose. But with the breath, and this is why you got to be careful with breath too, because you can adopt breathing patterns that you mentally think are the right ones. And then you're actually doing exercise for the rest of your life. I did that with Tai Chi. We were taught how to breathe a certain way. And then I thought, well, if it's right in the class, it must be right all the time. But it wasn't. It sucked in choir. You had to do something completely different. So it's like that with breath too. And so those kinds of breathing exercises that get you all ramped up are just a phenomenon that's going to engage your nervous system in a completely different way. So, right, say you purposely do a choppy breath. It's variable, but it's not going to establish coherence in your heart wave. Heart wave variability is an awesome experience, but that's not how you're going to get there. So, but that may not be what you want in that moment. So it just depends on what you want.
Yeah. I was just trying to understand sort of neurologically, in the connection to the heart in that sense, are we still maintaining that connection to the heart while going outward?
Not necessarily.
Yeah, that was my question. So if you lose the coherence, then maybe it kind of is a free for all, right? It's unknown what. But maybe the unknown is the part that is where some.
Have you ever seen a room of people going down that road?
I kind of have. I've sort of been in it.
You can get pretty whack, right?
Yeah.
Things and people will think that, sometimes people think that a big explosive expression or release is somehow healing. It's not necessarily, right? It can just be showy. It's kind of like a chiropractor and a client. And if the chiropractor produces the pop, right, then the client may feel satisfaction, but they won't necessarily have any healing going on as a result of that. So sometimes we get into agreements with each other that certain experiences have potency. I'm not against chiropractic, by the way, but a chiropractor deep in their practice knows that it's not that sound. You know, that's the resolution of a problem. It's just a sound your body can produce. Mm. And similarly, the excitement that can be generated in a room full of people doing some spectacular breathing pattern, and the movements that fill the room won't necessarily result in a deep healing of anybody.
It's interesting. You're reminding me now. Actually, this is fascinating because now I'm remembering. I had just come back from a Joe Dispenza retreat, and then attended a breathwork workshop like a day or two later. Mm. And my reaction in that, and I had done that once before, the same breathing process I had a pretty intense experience. But in this particular case, I had very minimal experience, like out of the order. So now that you say it, I'm thinking that maybe because I had self-regulated to the extent that my body didn't need that outward experience to kind of regulate that. So you just also reminded me that the journey's in and down, not up and out.
Yeah, and also, yeah. What did Jesus say? It's a age that asks for a sign. You know, it's like sometimes we need a sign. Yeah, sometimes we're at a level where we need a sign. We need to feel that the outward expression is important, and it makes you think like, yeah, something's happening here. But that may be all that's happening. Is that outward movement that makes you think, oh, I can access this somehow, but it's not actually what's going to settle you or heal you. Although it might put you on a path. So I'm not against it. Right. I'm just saying, like, those things can get addictive. They want to see the big show. We want to hear the pop. We want to see the person going into tetany on the table because it's a big show. But it could be a real quiet nasal breath, highly regulated, generating coherence in the heart that gets you a deep sense of transformation, and that actually has the potential to shift how you behave on the daily, as opposed to, how that experience happened that you then crave and want to have again, because that's the thing, but then it just becomes that, and not necessarily healing.
So, Gil, what are your thoughts about the breath work where one clamps down the perineum and the belly muscles and, has the cerebrospinal fluid under pressure so that you have the piezoelectric stimulation of the pineal gland?
Yeah. So I love to say, hold your good practices dearly and the stories you tell about them very lightly.
Beautiful.
Right. So Joe teaches that method, right? And you got to start somewhere with folks, right? Mm-hmm. And if that story engages you in that sequence of processes and that fairly complicated breath, it may bring you to an experience. Having the experience, though, doesn't mean that the way you described it is accurate. Right? Again, good practice. You tell whatever story you can to get you into it. Right? If you watch the folks that Joe brings on stage, who are very experienced at generating that the sequelae of that breath that's being called for in the whole big group, right? He just turns on the music and they start having that experience.
Yeah.
So they're not, or it can be very subtle. There are people who are in wheelchairs and incapacitated who achieve that breath movement. And I remember one wonderful video where there was a young man who was like driving down the road. And after having spent weeks practicing the breath, or months even, getting himself out of this deep depression, he literally had to pull over because he went into, gamma brain while driving and headed for the shoulder as quickly as he could. He wasn't doing the breath, and that experience is happening, which makes me say, then it's not necessary. It's not a prerequisite to generate that experience, which makes me think there's more going on than pressure from cerebral spinal fluid on piezoelectric crystals in the pineal gland, which is Joe's story. I got nothing against Joe's story. It could be true. I just don't hold on to it too tightly because I look at all these other examples that don't require that breath to bring you into that state. So there have to be other principles at work, like a kind of openness that's been generated through the system, a kind of circulatory openness. So the pineal gland has like 4 arteries going to it, and it plumps like a erection. You know, your pineal gland is a little boner in your brain. And that's why you can have a braingasm, because you're literally jerking off your brain. I mean, it's just what's going on. Now, there's a lot of, if any of you have ever experienced self-stimulation, there's a lot of ways to get there, right? And that's as true for your pineal gland as it is for your bits. You know, that's just how it is. So we don't want to get dogmatic about, say, a breath process as if that's the only path to an experience. And that being said, it seems to work for a lot of people, right? Which is awesome. So it's not about the veracity of the model, but its efficacy, its functionality. In other words, we can ask our angels some other day what actually happened there. All we know is, wow,
Yeah.
it's quite an experience. And also, it won't make you ethical, you know, it won't necessarily make you a nice person if you can have a braingasm. That's hard work at a totally different level.
So you've been in the healing world for decades. You have an amazing resume. What has been a handful of the best practices that you've seen that have created the best outcomes?
Forgiveness, right? Kindness, compassion for self and others.
Yeah.
Because it's not all about getting high on yourselves, which can actually bring people into a spontaneous state of compassion and transcendence. So I'm not, not against it. Just saying, like, that can become an addiction too. I got to sit down and do my breath and get high on my brain. There's also just like, have you let go of that thing someone did to you 20 years ago? You know, and what practice can you engage in? Just like the Hawaiian Ho'oponopono prayer, you know, like, you know, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. I mean, what a beautiful practice. I
actually had Joe Vitale on a few months ago, and he's written several books on that prayer. And
yeah, I mean, that'll cause miracles in your life. Surely as any practice. When you go for a nature walk, look at something, you know, pay attention to what's happening in the moment. There's a bird. Friggin' bird is a miracle. There's a trillion things going right in that bird too. And you're looking at it like, what the heck is going on here? That's insane. There's a plant growing in front of you. You could touch this bark and feel it. If you're a ghost, you just go right through it. We have abilities on this planet that you can only do here. And then we just stew inside of our head. So kind of getting out of your head is, I think, and being humble enough to acknowledge you don't get it right all the time, and yet you are creating your experiences. So, right, it's no one's fault.
No, I love it. I love the wisdom. I love the wisdom.
Yeah, it's not so much like some formula. It's like the Lord's Prayer. I mean, pray that prayer and look at it line by line, and it'll change your life. Just it'll knock you out of your superiority. You know,
you shared something wonderful on the interview that we did together about Saint Francis of Assisi and how he made one big mistake, and that's that he labeled his body like a donkey and treated it as such. Because, I mean, one thing that you said was self-love and how important that is. A lot of people really get stuck in that self-use battle, like they're not worthy, they don't deserve it, and so they just spend their lifetime flagellating their bodies and, you know, mentally and emotionally, and don't break out of that. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah. I mean, we finished the sentence, my body is. How do you finish it? Whatever you finish it with is your model of the body. My body is a fancy machine. You know, one, you're going to go find someone to fix it because you don't know how to fix the fancy machine, and it's going to be broken, and you're going to blame something else for it. Francis, as you mentioned, said, my body. He called his body brother ass. And we're talking 13th century here. Do you know how they treated mules in the 13th century? It was just this obstinate creature that needed to be subordinated to your will. And that's exactly how he treated his body. And he basically destroyed it. By a time before he was like 45, he died, from self-flagellation. And apologized on his death mat because he didn't sleep in a bed. He slept on the floor. He apologized to his body. He was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, brother ass. I think I took it too far." He was literally blind from like crying over his sins. So that was a mess. Why not? My body is a temple of the spirit, which I can enter into to be elevated by the miracle of creation, and find myself elevated to heights of transcendent ecstasy in sheer gratitude for the gift that I've been given in this body and the opportunity that it affords me to engage a world that's happening in slow motion. This place is molasses, folks. In your dreams, you think a thing and then it's happening. It's like you're flitting around and you have no focus and you're trying to wake up and you're like, well, yeah, we were on the beach, but then I was in this house and it was my house, but I didn't recognize it was my, and and your mind is just churning and producing all this garbage. And it's like, but here you have a thought. I want to, maybe I want to move to Seattle, whatever. And you think that for a couple of years and then you kind of start thinking, wow, can I really do that? And then, 4 years later, you're in Seattle, you live in an apartment, you're making new friends, going to a different Starbucks than you ever went to, right? So it all happens very slowly here. Our manifestations, we manifest stuff in molasses and that's a gift. It's a gift that the first thing that flits through your head doesn't manifest because we'd all be dead in 15 minutes on this planet if it weren't molasses, because we're given this gift of this body, but to keep it going, you can't actually follow every impulse that flits through your brain. So what a treat, that we can come down here and be in slow motion, learning the lessons of compassion, learning the lessons of patience, learning the lessons of kindness, and also learning what happens when you're nasty and brutish and short, because the feedback comes, sometimes quick, sometimes slowly. We talk about instant karma, and we say that's an advanced soul actually who has instant karma where the feedback comes much more quickly. You don't have to wait 3 lifetimes to realize you were a D-bag 3 lifetimes ago.
I love these. I love your perspective, Gil. There's that famous saying, I think it's attributed to Einstein, either everything's a miracle or nothing is.
So many wonderful things are attributed to Einstein.
He's the smartest dude we know of, so I guess, or one of them anyway. I guess Ramana Maharshi would rank up in there.
Beautiful.
Personally, I like Byron Katie.
He's amazing. Yeah, Byron Katie actually gave a lecture in her office once. No, she wasn't there, but I was like, wow, Byron Katie graced this space. It's glowing. I think she's an amazing insights that she offers onto us because we were talking earlier about how to come to your heart and not follow your brain so much. And her tools, are stellar for challenging our hubris, for challenging our mental constructs that make us right all the time. that judge others. She's always questioning every thought that comes through your mind. Is that true? Is that really true?
Yeah. And every time everybody flips it around and sees it from a whole new level, the answer to is it true is no.
Yeah, it's like, is the opposite true? Like, she did this to me. It's like, oh, maybe I did this to me, or maybe
I did this to her.
this to her. Like, oh wow. And if you can step into humility and do her practices, it'll bring you forward out of some really dark places, actually.
Yeah, I'm such a fan of hers. The number one book I think I recommend to people is Loving What Is. Who has a question for Gil? I know there's people on the call here that are have physical challenges, mental, emotional challenges. What would you like to ask this amazing human that's got a wonderful life perspective and has seen a lot of people heal from all kinds of things?
Mark is asking about who am I in the chat there.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mark, I was in a dark, dark place. For a long time. I was very depressed. I was walking on a beach as I did in the middle of the night. I would walk 10 miles on the beach in the middle of the night. I was basically trying to walk away from my head. Like, if I go faster, can I leave this head behind? Because it's tormenting me. At some point, I stopped on the beach and in anguish, cried out to the universe, who am I? Because I can't be this miserable inner dialogue. I know I'm not that. I can't be this harsh, angry inner dialogue, this depressed thing that's in my brain. And the question just hung in the air. I went home and I had a text on my phone from someone who I hadn't talked to in a couple of years, who was texting me the picture of a book called I Am That, which is all the teachings of Nisargadatta, who's an Indian guru dude. And just seeing those words there, I asked the question, who am I? And I went home and on my phone, it said, I am that. And I was reduced and transformed just by that, because I knew there was no way that happened without guidance, without help, my question was answered. I am that. And, when Moses asked the burning bush, who shall I say sent me when I go to tell the Pharaoh to let my people go? Who shall I say sent me? And the bush replies, basically, I am that I am. I mean, that's the rough translation of it, but it pops up in many cultures. It's in the Jewish teachings. It's in the Christian teachings. Jesus says, I am ego eimi, tofos tu kosmou. I am the light of the world. I am. Right. And I am one with my Father, or ham so ham, we have in the, I am that I am in the Taoist and in the Buddhist and in the Hindu meditations. Right. And I find it to be the driving question of my life. And really all of our lives, because every one of us, as you say, who am I? I am Gil Hedley. I am Mark Cooper. I am Rochelle Carmet. I am Dr. Tara Perry. Right? We have this divine identity that we punctuate with some add-on thing, but we don't actually have to say the rest of it. The rest of it isn't true for very long. It's kind of like part truth and part lie when we identify in that way. I'm a Tai Chi guy. Well, I was. I don't practice anymore. I'm a dad. Well, I still am, probably till I die. But, I don't have to do the daddy thing all day long like I used to. So that identity is sufficient to rest in. What could be more restful than just knowing that you are? You get knocked out of your body in a near-death experience and you're floating over it and looking at your body there on the ground. And you still know that you are. It never goes away. The I am is eternal, and we all carry it. There's no getting away from it. And that's like the greatest comfort, really, that you could ask for, is that through it all, we just keep on being. And we and you don't even have the body you had when you were a kid. It's gone. There's not a single cell, there's not a single molecule, there's nothing left. There might be a little bit of chemistry fillings. You know, that dentist packed that mercury in there when I was 9 years old, and it's still sitting there, but it's not who I am. You know, who I am has somehow maintained itself through many body iterations, such that I slough it all off of my pillow and in dust bunnies in my house, and still I am. And is it, and who do I think Gil Hedley is? Well, on 5 grams of mushroom, nothing much. it just melts away.
Are you a fan of Neville Goddard and Florence Scovel Shim? They talk a lot about the I am and the.
Yes, I've read them both many, many times.
Cool.
But that's a theme. In other words, they're speaking to it because it's been spoken to for thousands of years. Anyone who settles in is going to be wondering about that and trying to get closer. I mean, Nisargadatta basically says it's the only truth, pretty much the only true thing you can say. Everything else is a kind of an artificial gloss, you know. But if you just stick to the feeling that I am, you'll get closer and closer to that divine truth that we all are.
And then there's the neti aspect too, which is not this, not that. And when you peel away all the stuff that you're really not, which is the physical body, our identity, what we believe about ourselves, then we get down to that I am. Gail, you have a question.
Thanks. Gil, you've seen a great many modes of healing and transformation in your career. Do you have any thoughts about common aspects of those things? What perhaps is common to all of them, in the sense that they move people from one state to another in a good way?
That would be it. And that's what is the credit to any modality at any given time of your life, right? Because they're not all going to work forever. If you're growing, you're going to shed them as you go. If you lock into any one thing forever, it's turned into a dogma, right? And well, sometimes we need to do that too. So I'm not judging that either. I just know that as a person who wants to grow, I've found that I've lived several lifetimes in this body. You know, I was a devout Catholic. I was a daily mass goer for years and years and years. I was on my knees, and that was my way of being in the world. And then I shed it. I didn't shed the truths that I learned there, but I did shed the trappings, the customs, and moved into other ways of being, and then shed those. You know, and it's like if we're a snake moving through the world, we're going to shed a lot of skins, and it doesn't mean that the skin you shed wasn't the most valuable and sufficient protection at that time. It was, and then it wasn't. And if we give ourselves permission to have many models over the course of a lifetime, to have many modalities that move us forward, I think you'll move pretty far. And then for some people, it might work for them to dig deep into one modality, so deep that they discover its depths, right? Because many times we're just sort of cursorily, superficially, you know, encountering this thing and saying, well, that didn't work for me. And you do this and that didn't work for me. And, you know, maybe because you didn't go deep enough into any one thing. But I know, like for me, I was a Tai Chi guy for about 7 years. It was my love, my life. I did it for hours a day. I did Tai Chi. And then at some point, it became a straitjacket rather than a freedom. You know, when I started it, I didn't have much of a movement repertoire at all. I looked at my book, I read it, I put it down. I looked at my book. That was what I did. And then when I started doing Tai Chi, I was like, oh my gosh, I can move through space. I can occupy different, parts of my body. I can encounter people differently because I have a larger movement repertoire. And at some point, that movement repertoire itself became a straitjacket. And I was like, I can't ever do this form again. I have to let it go. And I shed it. And I'm like, no, I just have to do what comes. Yeah. So
it sounds as though your experience came partly from the factor of seeking the experience, or seeking some sort of change in your practices. You're always looking for the next thing. And I wonder whether that is one of the factors that is involved in transformation across that spectrum of modalities. I wonder what other reflection you might have about factors involved in change.
Yeah. I mean, I've read a lot about seeking, and I've done a lot of seeking. I've done a lot of dogma crushing, questioning everything, all the structures of the mind. And I think maybe the practices and teachings that I'm attracted to, because who knows, there's certainly a lot more than I've witnessed. But the ones that I've been attracted to and moved through don't shame you for that, or encourage that openness to levels of truth, right? Without ever really settling on, like, this is the truth. That's it. If a teaching carries that message, I'm more likely to be attracted to it, because it rings true to my own experience, knowing that I've believed things wholeheartedly and then questioned them and then let them go. And then it starts to get really, when you start really breaking down a lot of dogmas, not much survives it. In other words, the idea that you're over there and I'm over here can't even survive it. Right? It's like things that are patently obvious. What if you question the whole model of reality that we experience? Is that even true, or is it just passing through my brain, and that my brain tells me it's true? Maybe not.
There's that wonderful saying, if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him.
Yeah. I love, also, another favorite of mine is, the Buddha is the dry dung stick. It's like, sit with that for a little while. The Buddha is the dry dung stick. Like, yeah, consciousness is continuous, right? There's no, yeah.
Brenna's got a question for you.
Hi, Brian.
Hi, Gil. All right. I want to pick your brain on some of the nitty gritty of the physiology of what's going on in healings when people either spontaneously heal or heal over time, with the power of their mind. And then to add on to that question, it's like, okay, breaking that down, like, how is it really possible physiology for when, like, we, connect to the field, connect to this frequency of being healed, that our body in the 3D intelligently aligns and calls for the specific, genes and protein expression that, like, we need to heal that specific thing in our body. I mean, I understand the power of, like, programming and intention to a degree, but, like, how is that information really received, in our body and then in the universe, and then yet what's happening physiologically? I know that's a lot, but hopefully that makes sense.
Wow. And far be it from me to pretend any expertise in or ability to answer that question, but I think that the physiology of the physical body is, like, is secondary or tertiary, or it's like a 10th order phenomenon relative to I've heard beautiful stories from the Joe people about like, and I saw the template of my existence and they changed it. And then it floated down on me and my cancer was gone. It's like, damn, if that isn't a story about the secondary or tertiary quality of our physical, all of our physical is following those templates. I have a friend who's a world-class molecular biologist. He's the number one proteomics guy on the planet. He's lived his entire life looking at things that are 4 angstroms law, like things that we've never seen and we'll never see because we don't have the equipment or the understanding. And you have to be a world-class molecular biologist so you can get your head around it. And he designs molecules, makes them. He makes ingenious, thick molecules that can do things for people. And he came and took my dissection class this year. He's 83 years old. And he was transformed. He's like, I've never seen a body. Like, I've spent my whole career tinkering in the invisible realm. And now I realize I'm full of shit because it's all connected, right? And I think that I can isolate a phenomenon at that level, like it's going to stay there. And traipsing around in a cadaver for a week, he was like, oh, damn, the stuff is all continuous. I isolate it under my microscope, but it's not isolated in reality. And I think we could have a likewise shift in our conceptualization of our physiology. Yeah, you could describe what's happening in the physiology if you could pay attention to it, right? The physiology of healing. And I think it would be rewarding and awesome to do so, but it would also be a mistake to think that the healing is happening in the 4th order or the 10th order structure of matter. No, it's being when you have these healings, to my mind, from what I've read, witnessed, understand, that the change happens way up here and the physical has to follow. I think Joe says that over and over again.
So whatever anybody has to do to get to that level, because when you're talking about those Joe people, when they see that template come down and their cancer goes away because they rearrange they did that breath work and they did that contemplation and they did all that stuff to get to that level of connectedness, didn't they? Or
that much is not required of us to heal.
Does that sometimes happen when somebody's on the beach in a park bench looking out at the ocean?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that much is not. The lady with the hemorrhage touches the tassel of Jesus' cloak and she's healed. She didn't do breath work. She didn't, go to her pineal gland. She had faith.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he didn't say, I healed you. He said, your faith healed you.
Yes, that's right.
And I said that over and over again.
Yes.
Your faith healed you. And how you want to unpack that word faith, is going to be clearly like you knew that if you touched the tassel of my cloak, you'd be healed. That's all you needed. Or the centurion who comes and says, Lord, when I say someone jump, they jump. You don't got to come to my house to heal my son, but I know you will. Just say the word. He'll be healed. And Jesus commended that centurion to his own disciples, saying, now that's faith. And his faith just healed his kid. The kid didn't do breath work. Jesus didn't do breath work. The centurion didn't do breath work. But there was a conviction is that earnest conviction is unbelievably powerful and also hard to come by. Now, if you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you could tell that mountain to jump and it would jump.
I love that, Gil. That's just so beautiful. Brenna, was that the answer to your question?
I don't know. I probably skirted it quickly. She's like, no, I just want to know what's happening in the damn cell.
I also want to mention that when we were doing the interview, Gil, that you talked about Teresa of Avila and how amazing she was, but she went 14 years with just unbelievable conviction and practice and faith before all these amazing mystical experiences happened to her.
16 years dry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's serious faith. And what you said was, we don't know what's going on in the body because we don't have, pictures, live action pictures of what's going on. So when you're thinking all those wonderful, positive conviction thoughts of grace, we don't know what miracles are happening in our body. And it might take years to really experience the fruit of that.
Yeah, that's why I started off with 40 trillion cells doing hundreds of operations every second. We don't know anything about that. I don't know anything about what's going on in my body, Brenna, any more than I know what's going on in your body. And yet somehow it's connected. Like, in other words, I know no better what's going on in my big toe than I know what's going on in my neighbor's house. It's our bit is the consciousness, not the material facts. It's not our realm of intelligence. There's a wonderful teacher, if I can remember her name, Michelle Small-Wright. She's got a place called Perelandra in Virginia, or did. I don't know if she's even still on the planet. But she talked about human intelligence and nature intelligence. And she talked about our intelligence having to do with purpose, definition, intention. Now, that's our specialty, not so much matter, means, and action. That's nature's intelligence. And if we set an intention, nature literally lines up behind it because the intelligence are in relationship. We do our bit, direction, definition, purpose. We say, I want to have a garden to feed my family. And nature knows exactly what plants to plant and what nutrients they carry and how they should be organized on that plot in order to fulfill that intention. And so she's always checking in. She does, muscle testing, and she checks in to partner with nature in fulfilling intentions. I think we do that in the Joe work too. It's very much about setting an intention. I want to go from this box to that box. You're setting an intention. Now, how that happens, don't ask me. We really, you can try and learn it, but you'll always be on the outside of it. Our whole world of science is trying to learn it, but stands outside of it because it's not our specialty. And we don't have to know those things in order to heal. And we do heal. And wouldn't it be cool to have a lens in there to see what's happening? But I don't have that lens. I see through a glass darkly in this world.
If we did have a lens, it would certainly elevate our level of awe, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I hope so. But the thing is, we don't even look at our hand in front of our face.
Right. We don't look at the miracles that are all around us all the time.
Yeah, it's like people I want to see auras. I'm like, have you even seen your damn meat? You haven't even looked at your meat. The whole meat body, and you won't even look at it in the mirror because you're judgmental and mean about it. And yet your body itself, this massive chunk of 120 pounds of something standing there in front of the mirror, and it's oh my God, it's no good because it's got this wrinkle or it has this spot or there's a mole or I don't want it. And we write it off. I'm like, hundreds of trillions of successful operations. Just look at your hand. If you keep looking at your hand, eventually you'll see your aura. But you
I
have to
love that.
appreciate
And
the
humor is important in the journey too, is it not? It seems like people that, reach the levels where all the stuff starts to become the goodies start pouring out. There's a lot of laughter. There's a lot of fun.
I think so.
Christine's got a question. Are you okay running over a few minutes, Gil?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Christine.
Hi, Gail. I'll try to keep it really quick. I'm a Hakomi practitioner, so my bias is human relationshiping. I guess my question is about, everything I've learned from you and sort of what I've seen in the world of fascia in continuity and connection in the body. I wonder what your thoughts are on how that works relationally and particularly in groups of humans. Like, do you see a fascial equivalent and a micro to the macro of connectivity between human others?
Absolutely.
Yay.
That's like, that may be my biggest lesson from dissection.
Mm.
And you say, how could you get there from dissection? But when we learn anatomy, we learn all these chunks. We learn parts and pieces. We learn rectus femoris and biceps brachii. We learn the names of words for things that are chunked out of the body, like parts. But when you do the dissection, you only get to that chunked out part of the body with a scalpel on your hands and pulling it apart, which, if you're willing to think about that, means the only way to get to a part is to pull apart the whole, right? And there are membranes all throughout the body that are not accounted for very well. And I've spent decades playing with. And those subtle relationships within the body that prove its unity are forgotten in regional anatomy. As you chunk out the body into parts, name them, put them into taxonomies, and now you've organized your knowledge and you've turned the body into machine parts. But in integral anatomy, I'm focused on the relationship rather than the parts. It's just like it's like looking at the negative of a photograph, right? And it's like, oh, this is a story of relationships, this body. And these subtle relationships are easily missed if you're not paying attention. That's what led me to the next level, where I extrapolate that perhaps these things that I call different people, this person and that person, are actually in relationship. And if I go and look at the space in between, I find that it's full. The space in between us is full and continuous. And not only at the physics level, like if I'm standing next to you, literally there are electrons like switching bodies as we stand there, there's an exchange going on. It's not even stuck on me and stuck on you. No, it's all continuous. And that the textures of our relationships are not that subtle, actually. You know that as a therapist, right? You feel, oh, damn, these people are prickly with each other. Or, oh, there's some beautiful connection there, or whatever. What's the quality of the connection? You can ask that when you're doing dissection, but you can ask that when you're in a room of people. What's the quality of connection? What's its texture? And what is contributing to that texture? Like how, in other words, our thoughts about each other are biologically active. You get on an elevator with someone who's judging you, and you feel it because cells are responding to those thoughts. Our own cells are responsive to our thoughts, and the person standing next to us is responsive to our thoughts. I could say different things, and people would feel differently about me, right? In other words, and those feelings would be a manifestation of your cellular activity. There's no escaping it. So how do our thoughts and emotions generate the textures of the membranes through which we're connected? That's what you're playing with. And if we become conscious of our impact, we could possibly become more considerate for one another, both in the way we're managing our internal selves, as if we think it's just me, and the way that we're intentionally and consciously interacting with one another, because it's all biologically active, meaning it's affecting the whole person all the way down to the cells, again, being third, fourth order, 10th order phenomena.
Thank you. I one more quick piece. I know you know polyvagal theory pretty well, and Dr. Porges talks about like neuroception, or that sense of I grok you immediately, but I'm not consciously aware of it. I'm affected by your state immediately, and he describes it on the level of nervous system, but I guess the woo-woo nerd in me is like, but isn't there something even before that? My field and your field are, interacting with each other.
Absolutely. As fun and interesting as that vagus nerve is, it's also part of these tertiary phenomenon. I just got an email from Steve this morning.
I'll stay tuned for that.
Wow.
So can I just clarify one thing you just said? That just for you said basically what I interpret is we're internally and externally, our cells are reacting to everything that's happening. And then did you expand that to say neurologically the same?
Yeah, they're just more
Okay.
cells. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, nerve cells, many cells, heart cells, all the cells are they're awake to every thought you think. I once knew a wonderful young man. I heard him on a radio show. He was 16 years old, and he was a healer from Canada. He go by the name of Adam. It was like a stage name because he was so young, and everybody wanted to show up on his lawn and be healed. He was a healer. And this guy, Adam, he eventually took my dissection class, but I heard him on the radio saying he didn't know much anatomy. And so I was like, I sent him my DVDs. I was like, I'll teach you anatomy. He was appreciative and ended up taking my class, and he became a naturopath and a doctor. And he's a really cool guy. But he, in his books, spoke directly to his own clairvoyant perceptions and skills. He was a very, very, very visual guy. I am the opposite. I am zero visual. Joe goes, blah, 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 and I just black. I'm like, go with black, and so I'm like, that's all I got. Anyway, so he basically described how he could see a thought as it cascaded through the body, and the cells all managed themselves and changed their processes in response to a thought. Yeah. So I believe it without Adam, but it's fun. It's fun to have his clairvoyant perspective, being able to basically witness as a healer and a medical intuitive to the biologically active nature of our thoughts. But you don't even need all that to prove it. Just like pick a news article, any news article, and pay attention to it for 20 seconds and watch how your feelings change. And what you're feeling is an expression of your cells changing their processes in response to your thoughts about that article and the emotions that it brings up in you. And we torture ourselves and torment ourselves all the time by the way in which we give away our attention to that which is untoward and unhelpful to what we really want.
I love that. I interviewed the fellow who wrote "Don't Sleep, There Are Snakes." He lived with the Petaha tribe for about 30 years, which was a very remote tribe, and they were all so much happier than we are here in the West because they're so in the present.
Yeah, my gal Rachel just is right now in Colombia in the jungle working with an 800-year-long family lineage of shamans. And what a different world.
Yeah.
It's like just us and the banana trees and the monkeys out here, and we are paying attention to our inner processes in the most deep way.
Yeah. Well, Gil, I can't thank you enough for showing up today. Your wisdom is so wonderful. I love the expression, change your perspective. It raises your IQ points, 80 points. I butchered that a little bit, but a change in perspective is worth 80 IQ points. And I love the freshness, just the perspective change that you bring through all the years you've worked with the body and consciousness. So thank you so much. I was going to spend some time talking about the subconscious mind, but I really just wanted to hear Gil's words of wisdom. And if anybody is struggling with anything in their subconscious mind and they want some help with that, you can always reach out to me at consultterra.com. Answer some questions and we can get on there. But I've just found amazing results in just finding, whatever's stuck in the subconscious mind, getting rid of it, getting those blocks gone, those straight jackets that we picked up along the way, somewhere between the ages of 2 and 10 usually, but I have people going back to the womb as well. And it's just so wonderful to see the backpack come off of people's backs and allow them to experience more freedom, more lightness, more, more of what we're here for. I don't think we're meant to miss this awesome, beautiful, extraordinary journey. So Gil, thank you so much for everything you do. How do people reach out to you? I know you have a lot of recorded programs. How do they participate in all of that? GilHedley.com. Yeah. I love the font that you have that in. Gil, did you spend a lot of time with
That is the Gil font. That is I learned how to print sort of in 3rd grade. I got a D in penmanship and it's still going strong.
I love it. Thank you so much. All right. Well, thank you so much. And thanks for everybody joining us. And we're grateful that we can send the recording out to those who missed it. And we will see you. See you in the future.
Thanks so much. I appreciate your inviting me to chat. It's super fun.
Fantastic.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody have an amazing day. Look at your hands, feel your fingerprints and just recognize what an amazing miracle you are.
Mm-hmm. Oh, now you got the hearts to go. I don't know how you do that. I got to do better. Very impressive.
Boom, 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 boom.
A wonderful day, folks.
And if you haven't seen Gil's heart video on YouTube, Google that because it's really extraordinary. Bye, everyone. This podcast is intended for the purpose of providing information and education. It does not provide advice and is not meant to be used for any self-diagnosis or the replacement of any kind of licensed professional. The creators and individuals appearing here do not endorse any specific tests, positions, medications, products, or procedures. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of